Salutations, fellow chemists. Today we're going to look at the common chromatography errors that people make when they are conducting a chromatography experiment. So before we even get started, be aware, let's go for the red, that chromatography, the first part, chroma, is Greek for color. And anything that has a graph in there usually suggests that you're going to plot some sort of graph. So chromatography just gives you the colors being separated for a mixture, and what you get at the end is a chromatogram, which you can think of as a graph of how far all of these different colors have traveled up your paper. So before we look at the errors, I want you to think about what these labels are going to be over here. And I'm going to start by explaining how it works so we can understand how we can make some mistakes and how to spot those mistakes if we do make them. So how does it work? First thing is you need to understand there are two phases. You have the mobile phase, let's underline this here, mobile phase, and the stationary phase. If I can spell today, stationary phase. Excellent. So the mobile phase is going to be the part that moves. Mobile just means to be able to move. So in this case, it's usually the solvent, or it is always the solvent, but the solvent is usually water, or you can have other liquids as well. So let's say that the mobile phase is the part that moves, and that will be the liquid solvent that we use. Be aware, lots of people get this confused and think that the spots traveling up the paper, because they move, they are the mobile phase. That is not true. Mobile phase, always think solvent. Next, let's look at the stationary phase. So stationary means to stay still. So this is the part that doesn't move. And in our case here, that will be the filter paper or the chromatography paper, depending on what you have available to you. But we can just write paper here so it's very clear. So how does it work based on those different phases? Well, you need to think for the mobile phase, what we're looking at is our solubility of our spots in the mobile phase. So here, let's use a different color and swapping over to the blue. So for the mobile phase, I'm thinking of the best place to write it. I'll write it underneath. So for the mobile phase, it's all to do with the solubility. So how soluble is the mixture, the part of the mixture we're trying to separate in our mobile phase. And for the stationary phase, you're thinking about the attraction to that paper. Okay, so how attracted is the spot to the paper? And depending on these two factors here, the colors are going to move at different speeds, different rates, different distances, okay? So if you're more soluble in the mobile phase, for example, you travel along with the solvent a lot quicker. And if you are attracted to the stationary phase, you're stuck on the paper, so you don't get to travel as much there. So that is how it works. We're now going to move on to looking at the common errors. But before we do that, let's label the diagram. So I'm going to clean this board. And nice and quickly, board is clean. Perfect. And labeling these very quickly, I'm going to go for red for my labels. A, you should be able to see here now, this is our chromatography paper or filter paper. So that's your chromatography paper. And let's have a look at what B is. See if you can beat me to it before I get there. B over here is just a beaker to hold our solvent. And C over here is the solvent itself. Remember, the solvent is your mobile phase. And let's have a look at D. So D here is pointing to the line that our spots are on, and that is called the baseline. The baseline. And lastly, E. E points to the spots themselves. So these are spots to be separated. It can also be ink as well, separated. I'm writing backwards here, doing a bit of a half twist there. But that hopefully helps you to see all of these different bits of equipment. I am going to get rid of this though, but be aware I'm going to be referring to these as we go through our explanation here. So cleaning this off very quickly. Now we are at the stage where we can look at the common errors. So first error in this one here, error number 1. If you look at it here, you can see, let's just move over so you can see the diagram. You can see that our baseline, we mentioned part D there, label D, our baseline is under under our solvents there. So baseline under the solvent, or inside the solvent. Let's put inside is a better word there. Baseline inside solvent. And I'm going to give you one more error here that you need to know. There are other errors that I'm going to talk about but not write down, because these two are the ones that come up in exams all of the time. So number 2, what can happen is your baseline again. Baseline will be drawn in ink, and I'm going to explain why these both lead to undesirable results. So the undesirable results here, undesirable consequences of these, always remember the keyword dissolve. Whenever you're thinking about chromatography errors, think about the explanation involving the word dissolve. So first thing here, if your baseline is inside the solvent, then your spots, and let's put these spots will dissolve into the solvent. And that is not great, because if they're dissolving into the solvents, then they do not get to travel up the paper, and you can't do your calculations or analysis thereafter. And then the last thing here, the baseline drawn in ink, what you've got to realize is the ink is soluble in water. Let's label that over here. So that's soluble. So again, keyword dissolve. The baseline will, not just the baseline actually. In this case, yeah, let's just focus on the baseline. So the baseline will dissolve in the solvent as well. And why is this a problem? Well, when you get to year 11, you'll realize that the baseline is used to do some calculations that helps us to determine exactly what we have in our mixture or our ink, and you do not want that dissolving. So again, keyword is dissolve. You do not want that to happen. So 2 other things that could go wrong here that you do not need to know for your exam, but I think is quite interesting anyway, is that your solvent could not allow you to dissolve some of your spots as well. So sometimes the spots do not dissolve in the solvent of choice, and you need to make sure you choose a different solvent that will allow you to do that. And if they don't dissolve, obviously, they do not travel up the paper. Another mistake here is that there isn't a lid here, and sometimes you might be using a solvent like ethanol that evaporates very easily, and you want to use a lid to keep that solvent inside your solution, inside your beaker, not solution. So hopefully, looking at all of this here, you are able to spot the common errors associated with chromatography. Always remember the word dissolve, and also hopefully you are clear on how it works. Like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and our TikToks, and I'll see you in the next video.